Let's take a look at self-test exercise 5 for chapter 4. We're going to do it a little bit different to what the book asks for. It's asking for a cash receipts journal and a cash payments journal. But as we've discussed, that's not something that we tend to use after this week. So we've kind of moved away from using it at all. And instead, we're going to use a general journal layout. Now, if you're seeing this video, the template is up on Connect in a logical place. It'll be somewhere under additional content, maybe in like this week's session content or something under there. And have a go at filling this one in. I think we've got 14 journals to do, and I've given you a template that has the training wheels attached, so it'll make us think in the correct process to come up with the right debits and credits for transactions. If you do get stuck on a transaction, like if we look back here and you're not sure how to record rent, always recommend just going back and finding an example transaction somewhere in the book and copying it. It's not cheating. That's called being efficient. Accountants do that no matter how far up they go. CAs and CPAs will go back and look at last year's work every single year rather than having to build things from scratch. Okay, so our first transaction, I can find my other window. Might have closed it. Is loan proceeds received. This is someone who's gone to the bank, asked for a loan, and then received it. So that's likely to increase our cash or our cash at bank. And that'll be the first thing that I jot down. I'll just say something like bank or cash at bank. And then there's always at least two accounts, isn't there? So we have to think, well, why is the bank going up? It's because I got a loan. So the other side might just be loan or bank loan. And then we can see over to the side here that there's no GST on that transaction. Got to put the date in, so I'll just put 1st of March here. And then you can do your narrations before doing all the other bits. So I'll just say something like loan proceeds received. Don't overthink the narrations. As long as someone who's reading it that's not an accountant can understand the point of the journal, then you've done the right thing. Going through the training wheel component, we have a type, which is using the RIELO acronym. And at that point, you have to know your definitions for things. So I know that revenue, for example, is the income earned through income earning activities such as sales, but there's no revenue happening here. If you get stuck at that point, stop and do a table. So expand out your RIELO table, put your definitions into it, go to chapter 1 of the book to find the definitions if you're not confident on those, or even just look for examples somewhere in chapters 1 through 4, you'll be able to see what the accounts are. In this case, this is an asset, something that we own, whereas a loan is something that we owe. So it's the opposite of an asset, liability. With natures, the E's and the A's, I probably should have those underlined just to remind me that they have something in common. They are a store of value or a destination of value or a debit. Those are the ways to think about those two. These two are debit, which means I have one asset here, that's a debit. Everything else is therefore a credit. So that's a credit. If I take out loan proceeds, I'm increasing my bank account. I'm also increasing my debt, my liability. So I'm going to increase both. And that means that I have two increases. So over here in my final columns, I need to do the same as nature. If something is increasing, we do the same as its nature. If it's decreasing, we do the opposite of nature. So increase debit, should be an X there, and then over here another X. If you have any questions at any point, guys, you're welcome to ask. And if you're watching the video, then just send me an email. So this transaction was worth 15 grand. I don't have to know that off by heart, obviously. I just come and look at the transaction, 15 grand. All of that is done. Just a little chat on convention, because I might accidentally not follow it, but it is quite important just for readability. At the end of this whole process, the training wheel thing shouldn't be there. So that's what a real general journal looks like. If I was submitting this, I probably wouldn't have the training wheels visible. You wouldn't have this extra space if that was something that you were trying to present nicely. And the other thing is you want your debits on top. So this has ended up being a debit. It needs to be on top, and your credits on the bottom. Finally, whichever is a credit should be indented a little bit in the account column. So I'll just put in a few spaces there. And then if I hide this again, we can see, and I'll hide this one too. That's what a proper general journal should look like at the end. Got the credit on the bottom indented a little bit. All right, move on to the next one. Now I will steadily accelerate as I get through. I went as slow as possible for that one. I'll go slightly faster now, and by the end, I'll just be explaining sort of the difference between the transactions rather than how I got there. So the owner contributed cash, very similar to the thing above, but instead of getting some money from debt, we're getting it from equity. Those are the two places we can get money. We either take out a loan or we put our own money in. So the first part's going to be the same, isn't it? The bank asset going up. The dollar value is only 8 grand, but I can copy that. Sorry. Sometimes I have good reflexes. I can like mute the recording, but that one came out of nowhere. All right. So 2nd of March, 8 grand. What else happened? Well, I need the why. So I've got the bank went up, but why? What was the source of the value? Some sort of equity account. In this case, we call it capital. So when the owner is putting in their own funds. Now, I've indented that because I know it's going to end up being a credit at the end of the day. How do I know is going to end up being a credit? But feel free not to answer if you don't want to be in the recording, that's fine. The way that I know is because I've already got a debit and I need an equal and opposite. Otherwise, you can follow the thought process through. So equity has a credit nature. If I look up here, it's not underlined. And then I'm increasing the equity. Third transaction, it looks like our first cash payment rather than cash receipt. So 6th of March, this one. You'll notice that I'm skipping the document number part. Probably ideally I would have another column, but I've got enough on the projector as it is. When I am spending cash, I end up crediting the bank account. But if you're not ready to take that sort of leap, what we can do is I'll just keep going as I have been. So I'll start with bank. And it looks like it was for gym equipment. So I can just call that gym equipment. Do you think that's an asset or an expense? Yeah, it is an asset. That's got it's going to last more than a year. It's got a future benefit for the business rather than one we're using up straight away. So actually, both of these are assets. So in my next column, they're both something that we own. Now, because they're both assets, I can just copy my homework from before, and I've already done assets up here. I don't have to think again, but good idea to think again. So looking up at the Rielo table, the two things that are underlined are debits in nature. So assets and expenses are debit in nature. Now I have to decide, in the context of this transaction, am I increasing or decreasing this particular thing? And I'm spending cash this time. I'm buying some equipment. So this is going to decrease, but the asset for the gym equipment should be increasing. Now, when something decreases, we do the opposite of nature. When it increases, we do the same as nature, and then do that final check. Do my debits equal my credits? I need my dollar figures. Now, there's something else that I haven't factored in here. Anyone spot it? It's to do with the $800 that's in that 8,800. Yeah. If you go to Rebel Sport or something and buy some gym equipment, you're likely paying GST. Now, I haven't factored that in. So this is the first time as well we have a tick. And what's going to happen here is one of these numbers will need to go down to 8,000 in order for me to split out the GST. Let's start with the bank. Did I pay the full amount, including GST? Absolutely. So it's not this one that needs to go down. It must be the other one. And it should make sense because if I make this 8,000, I'll do the maths in a second. Um, that shows that I really only spent $8,000 on gym equipment. That was the value of the asset that I bought. The extra $800 is a tax that I'm paying. So it shouldn't be within the gym equipment asset, not really. So how can I strip out the GST? There's a few ways. That the quickest way here is you do equals the gross amount and divided by 1.1. So that will actually give me the 8,000 that I'm looking for. You could separately work out the GST and then subtract it, but that's just a little bit faster. GST paid is the final account here because I paid some GST. And I need to make sure it goes on the correct side so that all my debits added up equal my credit. This is an asset. GST paid is an asset because I'm going to get it refunded to me in the future if I'm registered for GST. So it's a future benefit to me. GST collected is the liability one if you're a little bit confused on that. That's what you get on sales and you have to pay that in the future. All right. Debits still equal credits. I'm happy with that. All right. Paid rent. There is some GST on it. You can kind of tell by the number, 440. Now you'll notice I have not followed convention there, have I? I've got the debits on the bottom. I've got the credit on top. It's the same thing as if you write a sentence, and if I wrote a sentence without a capital letter and a full stop, it's just a bit nastier to read. I'm not going to be doing any rearranging in this particular exercise. I don't think it's worth anyone's time to watch at the moment. All right. So it was for rent, and there was GST paid on it. Now, if you've already done the work up above, you can press equals and just click. So that's an asset. I haven't done rent yet, so I have to think for that one, but I have done GST paid. Now, looking at my Rielo table, we have to decide what rent is. It's not revenue. It's either an expense or an asset or a liability. Those are the only things that you might be thinking it is because owner's equity is the owner putting money in. But if I pay for rent, I'm not really getting something as a future benefit. I'm paying for something I've already benefited from, or at most I'm paying like a month in advance, which arguably is a bit of an asset. But no, this one is certainly an expense, just like electricity. So this one is expense. But all of these three things have something in common. They're underlined, expenses and assets, which means they all have a debit in nature. These two should be increasing because I'm paying more of those. Got to record that. And then this is decreasing because my bank account has to go down. And then I can do the opposite of the nature when I'm decreasing or the same as nature when I'm increasing. I usually put in the gross first, and then you can use formula that target that gross figure. Here we're buying another asset. So kind of like the gym equipment one, I'm going to go and copy my gym equipment after I put the date in. And then just update what I need to update. Bought a computer this time, another asset. These things are all the same, but the dollar figure will change. 1650. Make sure your debits equal your credits at the end. So add those up, do a final check. Now you'll see that in the textbook and going forward, you probably see assets called at cost. Has anyone seen that yet? Just looking through your book, you see an asset, it'll be like motor vehicles at cost or gym equipment at cost. That's the correct way to name the account because it tells people how it's been valued in the system. If I'm looking at something that says at cost, I know that it hasn't been adjusted for depreciation or appreciation. It hasn't gone up or down in value since buying it. Looks like our first time making a real sale here on the 14th. That's a scary couple of weeks. All right, so we received money to a bank account, cash receipts, and it says for training. Rather than calling it just training, you'd probably be calling it something like training fees or training revenue. Um, as long as you ended up calling it a revenue account to represent that it was an activity, an income earning activity that we performed that generated value, then you'd be correct. The name doesn't matter that much, as long as people can understand what it's meant to be. The bank is an asset, of course, and are we registered for GST? Yes. It looks like there is going to be GST on this. It's not paid though, it's collected. We collect it, we have to stick it in a bank account until we lodge our activity statement at some point, and then we have to pay that to the tax office. This person probably doesn't need to register at this point if they've just started their business. The threshold for registration is 75,000 a year. So as soon as you expect to be earning that, that's when you register. All three of those are increasing because the bank goes up when I receive money. My revenue activity goes up when I conduct that revenue activity, and the amount that I owe the tax office goes up as I collect GST. Got those in the wrong thing though, don't I? All right, so assets are debit, but everything else is a credit except an expense. We don't have any expenses. And that one was 605 gross. And that's what they would have paid us. But if you're not sure about that, then do the little X trick that I do because it'll tell you which side the gross is. Debit increase, so debit. Credit and credit both increase, so both are on the credit side. And then you can tell that the larger number has to go here. 605, and then you can split it up. Paid for general cleaning. The supplier is not registered for GST. That means they haven't charged us GST. It would be an error to record GST paid. If I did record GST paid on this, I would end up claiming back something from the tax office that I'm not legally allowed to claim back. My cleaning expense is increasing. My bank asset is decreasing. That's $50. Another cash receipt. Let's not reinvent it. If you've used references in your formula, all you really need to do is change the gross figure and everything else just updates, as long as those references are targeting that gross figure. Going to pay some of the loan back. So we're going to pay out of the bank account what the other account should be. The only clue we have is that it was for the loan. So if I put loan here and then I make sure that it's decreasing, that should work because I'm decreasing the amount of debt by making this payment. Right. So assets always have a debit nature, liabilities always have a credit nature. It does not matter if you're planning on increasing or decreasing in this particular transaction. The natures do not change. Both decreasing this time. That's a first. So a debit that decreases means I do the opposite of that. I do a credit. And a credit decreasing means I do a debit. So I'm decreasing my bank asset. I'm decreasing my loan. No GST on that. And something that hasn't been dealt with in that particular repayment is that a bank loan is a bit more complicated than that. There's interest. There's often fees, but if we think about how this would work if this was your mortgage or any realistic loan, then maybe only $400 of this would go to the principal if you're lucky. Depends on the interest rate. And then $100 would go to interest expense, which would be a debit and increasing. So your bank is still going down by the full amount, but you're not applying all of that against the debt because some of it got eaten up by interest. That's not what's happened here. I'll get rid of it. Pay for some stationery. Which one is that most like so far? Did we pay for any other expenses? We did here, but that one wasn't registered for GST, so I don't want to copy that one. What about rent? That was an expense and it has GST on it. So if I go find the rent transaction, that'll be the one to use. Right, so it was on the 25th of March, this one, and it wasn't for rent, it's for stationery. All right, bank should be going down. I'm happy with that. The expense is going up and the GST is going up. I do need to change my dollar figure to 20. I get to claim $20 back when I lodge my BAS. All right, another cash receipts for training. Only two things to change for those. They got the date on the 28th and then the amount on 660 for this one. Two things happened on the 30th. We're actually going to record the interest now. Generally, you would do it at the same time as making the repayment. We're going to accrue some interest. So, and some bank charges. You could do this in one journal, but at this stage, only week two, it's fine to just do multiple journals rather than to try and complicate things. I'll show both, but my official answer is just going to have them separate. So the bank account will be affected because we're paying for bank charges. It's got to come from somewhere. I think I missed drawings, didn't I? Can't do that. Do some drawings first. So that is an asset. Drawings. What's that? It is owner's equity. Or if you just type equity, that's fine too. Now, thinking about the natures of these, remember drawings is a bit of a weird one. It's actually contra owner's equity or negative owner's equity. It's the only example of that. Out of all the accounts we've talked about so far, that is the only negative account that we've talked about. There is one other main one that we'll cover next term. But for this term, it's really just drawings that's a bit odd. The way to do your drawings one is either find an example or when you are doing your increase decrease, focus on the types rather than the names over here, and then it will make more sense. So I'm going to put in A debit, of course, for here, and a credit for owner's equity, because the only things that are debit in nature are expenses and assets. And then I'm going to think, are my assets increasing or decreasing when I draw out? They're decreasing. So that's going to be opposite of nature. Is my owner's equity increasing or decreasing? I'm drawing out, aren't I? I'm not asking, is drawings increasing? I'm asking, is my owner's equity increasing? So that's the way to think about pretty much all of them. You shouldn't really look at the account when you're asking increase, decrease. You look at the type. So owner's equity is decreasing, the owner's investment is actually decreasing. But if you get completely like stuck on that, it's only a two-line journal, so just balance it. Like you know that it's go sorry, I got that on the wrong side. Just balance it. You know that you need a debit and a credit. So no matter what you're going to put here, you can check over here if you've done it right, as long as you get the bank part right. Right. So we're decreasing owner's equity, decreasing the amount of investment in the business. And then, as I said, two different transactions, one for bank charges, one for interest on the loan. So with bank charges, that one's fairly straightforward. It should just be the bank and bank charges. And the bank will be decreasing and bank charges will be increasing because I'm paying more bank charges. Um, Bank is always an asset. Done that one a lot now. Bank charges are a cost of doing business. And yeah, they're an expense. They're not something that we're going to get value from in the future, like a car. So expense. Assets and expenses are both debit in nature. So when something is increasing, I'll do the same. But when it's decreasing, I'll do the opposite. And then I can just put in the figure. All right, finally, loan interest. This one's a bit misleading. There's a couple of ways this could go. Um, there's definitely going to be interest, which is an expense. In fact, usually in the account name itself, you will specify expense because there is interest income as well. You can earn interest on a bank account. So I'll call this one interest expense. And expenses have a debit nature, and I'm paying more of it. So I'll increase it by $100. And that needs to balance. So I know that there's another side to it, and I just need to decide what the other side should be. Two options here as I see it. I don't think the question's very clear about which way we should go. We could say bank. I'm sure some of you are thinking bank, because then we can go asset. Assets have a debit nature and we're decreasing it. We could also say bank loan, because if I say bank loan, I've got liability here, which has a credit nature and I'm increasing the liability. So with the interest, it either increases the amount you owe, which is what's currently on the screen, or if you've actually paid it out of your bank account, it's going to decrease your asset for bank. And I think that'll be the answer that's in the textbook because pretty much all the transactions have used the bank account, haven't they? Okay, that's the end of self-test exercise 5 it was. I'm going to stop the recording here, have a go at it. So you've got an empty template where you can work your way through it, coming back to the recording if you need to.